All right, welcome back. So it's time for edit. You're getting near the end of the app when Dr. Fisher finally comes around to do an edit. I'm always slow to do edit just because it takes UI to ask them how they want to make the change. And I don't know, it just always takes a little bit. So our goal is when you click this button, we want to go into editing mode. So editing mode is kind of like a different thing. We want to show a input here. We want to show a save and cancel button over here. So let's go over and look at kind of what we've got so far. So if we go into our post service, not the post service, the post TypeScript, we can see that there's this enable editing mode. So the first thing the editing mode ought to do is it ought to set the editing mode. So the editing mode is going to be equal to, what are our options? Editing. So that's going to be one thing that's going to need to happen. Some other things that are going to need to happen in our HTML. So let's go ahead and open up our HTML. So one thing is the buttons are going to change. So we've kind of got our editing mode 1 buttons. And then if we just copy that, now we've got our editing mode 2 buttons. And keep in mind it's 2 because that's the mode that we're going in here to. So if you're in editing mode 2, you're going to have a save and a cancel button. So they're going to call save and cancel. Their icons, I believe, are just called save and cancel. We'll just see if those show up fine. And so let's go make those two functions, so save and cancel. So we're going to go into our TypeScript here, and we'll just go ahead and put a save and a cancel down at the bottom. So we'll say save, it's void function. It's going to have a little to-do, save the change. And then the next thing it's going to do is it's going to set the editing mode back to just displaying the edit and cancel, or sorry, the edit and delete buttons. So it's going to be display the edit delete buttons. And then cancel is going to do very similar stuff, except for cancel is done at this moment, right? That's all cancel is going to do. So actually I'm going to take out the log because there's none more to do with cancel. So let's see if when we hit enable editing, it flips this bit. I guess we can take off our console log. And when we flip that bit, because of the HTML, it should show those two new buttons. So if I hit edit on this one, I get save and cancel. If I hit save, it says to do, save the change. If I go back into editing mode and I hit cancel, there's no log, but it does cancel out of it. The other thing we want to do with editing mode is we want to show something different here. So instead of just the text 2, we want to show something different. So we're going to have to go into the HTML for that. And that is essentially this guy right here. So normally we show the body, but in some situations we want to show something different. So what we're going to do is we're going to ngIf this guy, and we're going to use the ng else if. And we're going to show the text as long as we're not, so we're going to say editing mode is not equal to 2. So long as the editing mode is not equal to 2, feels weird to not put spaces around my operators, but it seems like most people don't in HTML, so I guess I won't. So as long as it's not 2, we're going to show just the text. But if it is 2, we're going to use the editing mode template. So the editing mode template, get rid of a space there, is going to be an ng template. And then inside this template is going to be, kind of something different. So normally I copy this one and then I paste it down below, but this is going to be kind of different, right? And it's going to be an MD input container. And this MD input container, I suppose I ought to close it like that. It's going to have an input inside of it. This input is going to be of type equal to text. The input is also going to need the MD input attribute, which is camel case, which always cracks me up. That obviously is going to change, so it's just a matter of time till I do that. That change someday. There's other fields we can set on this as well. So the input container, you can pick a divider color if you want. So divider color, I'll use my accent again and see how that looks. You can always use worn or primary or leave it blank. Other things I want to do, I probably ought to put a placeholder in here. The placeholder by default kind of like floats above it once you click into it. And we'll just say edit your post in the placeholder. And then we want to do the actually binding it. So we make our banana in a box for our NG model. And this is something that's provided by the forms module. And we're going to bind it to some model object. I'm going to make up a new variable for this. So I don't want to bind it to the post because I don't want to modify it because they might hit cancel. So I'm just going to call it the updated post body. Seems like a fine model name. And then whenever you're using NG forms, you also have to give the name attribute, which doesn't really do anything except for the fact that it's required, and if you leave it off, things don't work. So I've got this updated post body, which is just going to be a new variable. So I'm just going to kind of stick it somewhere up at the top here. It needs to be public, but it actually gets public by default, so you can just leave off the fact that it's public. I guess I'll take it off on that one too, since it's the default. So my updated post body, at the moment they click edit, I want to set it at that moment. So I'll say updated post body is equal to whatever the post body is, right? So at the moment they click edit, I want to set that text. And then if they hit save, then I'm going to use that new text. So to say save the change to this updated post body. So let's go see if that works, and then we'll actually use that information. So I hit edit right here, and it didn't work at all. So I didn't display my input. So obviously I typed something wrong up here. Aha, I can see what it is. I said to use the editing mode templates, but I didn't say that this thing is the editing mode template. So that's one mistake I made. Cool, and it looks like other than that it worked. Now you can say 20,000 and hit save, and it'll say to do, save the change to 20,000. So cool, so now all we need to do is we need to actually just do something with this change. So let's go ahead and push it on up. The way we push things on up is we use our service. So we say this dot post service. And interestingly, we've already got an update method on there, which, hey, that's kind of perfect. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, update this dot post with author $key to, we'll just say updated post. An updated post, we could, modify this object, but I think the way that I prefer to do it is I prefer to just make a brand new one, right? So I'm just going to say new post, and this new post is going to have a body that's equal to the updated post body. Look at my variable names there. Update post body is equal to that. And then the updated post author key. And again, you can get this one from wherever you want. But I always kind of like getting it from the auth service because I'm the person that signed in. So if I take this new body and I take this new author key, which admittedly is just me, I call a method that I've already made over in the post service, so it should just work, right? So we should be able to edit things. And if you wanted to, you could watch them both live. So right now it's 2. If I say edit and I make it 2000, as soon as I hit save, you can see that it saved it to 2000. If I edit the one above it, so this was a 1, I make it say hello class, and I hit enter. Well, you hit enter, nothing happens, but you hit save, it says hello class. I would kind of like for something to happen when I press enter, but I'm going to check it in first. So this is a functional edit without bells and whistles. So the bells and whistles that I'm going to add on is I'd kind of like for enter to do the update. I'd also like when I click the edit button for the input field to take focus right away. So let's go ahead and do enter first, just because it's going to be easy. So enter is an event. So in the same way that you have like click events, you can add more types of events. So we're going to do a key up enter event, and we're going to say what function to call. So if you're in this input field and you do a key up enter, we just want to call save, right? So that's a little bell and whistle. So when I hit edit on this and I say 20, when I hit enter, that does the same thing as clicking the save button. By the way, it says to do save in here. We're now saving it, so let's go update that. So actually I'm just going to take out that console log because it's working. So that's one bell and whistle. The other bells and whistles that I'd like for this button over here to be disabled if it hasn't been changed. So I don't even want to have a save button unless it's changed. That's also a fairly easy one to do, so I'll just kind of do it next. And so that's my save button here. I want this button to be disabled sometimes. And so the question is, how do you know if it should be disabled or not? Well, there's some comparison between the updated post body and the post with author dot body. And so it's disabled if this is equal to that. So if they're the same, then make it be disabled. So that should be a pretty easy change. So now whenever I click on edit, you can see it's disabled, so I can't click it. But once it's changed, it's enabled, right? And interestingly, like if you change it, but then you put it back to what it was, it's disabled there as well. Now, technically, the enter button will still do a submit, but I'm going to pretend like users won't discover that. But I just kind of like little features like that. So it's disabled until you change it. Next thing I'd like to do is I hate having to click edit and then click into this area. That's kind of annoying. I wish that when you hit edit, it would just put focus on that. That's a little bit harder, so I'm going to do that as a separate check-in. So here I just did the enter on save and then the disable. And then over here I got rid of a console log. So this is enter to save and disable. Let's go ahead and do the harder one next. So that is putting the focus on the input. There's a couple ways to do it. One way to do it is when you hit the save button, pass in a variable to this input field. And if you pass in a variable to that input field, then you can use that to put focus on. And we can use that philosophy, but there's going to be a problem with it when it gets to the end of the day. So we'll go ahead and go down the path, and we'll just see what goes wrong. So we'll just say this is the update input element, right? So whenever I call save, I'm just going to pass in the update input element. So I called save up here. Oops, not when I call save. That's the wrong place. When I call edit, yeah, here's the edit. So this is what I want to call. So whenever I click on edit, I want to pass this into my TypeScript, and then it'll put focus on it for me. So let's just go ahead and do that really quick. It's gonna fail, but this is my input element, and it's an HTML element. You can do a little better than that. You could call it an HTML input element, and that's a built-in thing that it knows about. And what you can do here is you can say input element dot focus. Since I happen to know it's going to fail, I'm going to go ahead and print out a little bit. So I'm going to say input element equals, and I'm just going to see what my input element equals, because it won't be what you think. So let's go ahead and click on edit, and it just crashed horribly. And it says input element equals undefined. So why did it not work is the real question. The reason it didn't work is because of this guy right here, ngIf. What ngIf does is it makes one thing be in the DOM and the other thing just not be in the DOM at all. And at the moment you click enable editing, this doesn't exist. So you called enable editing and you passed in something that doesn't exist. And no surprise, it doesn't exist, and so you can't really use it. That's a pain, right? So I don't know. It's like, well, how do I want to fix this? There's a lot of ways I can fix this. One way you could fix it is to not use ngIf. If you remember back to when we did the animations, we had that same problem there, whereas ngIf was like too extreme in keeping something out of the DOM. So let's go down that path. And if we go down that path, we can actually get rid of the else up here, because we're not going to use the else approach. We can get rid of the ng template because we're not using ng templates. We can leave the ngIf up here. So this is, if it's not to show this, but on the input container, we're going to do it a different way. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the class trick. And so the class trick works like this. So it says add the class hide only in certain circumstances. So we're going to add the class hide anytime it's not equal to 2. And so as long as it's not 2, add the class hide. So now I've got to go into the HTML. And we'll say if you've got the class hide, what we want there is we want display none. And display none will leave you in the DOM, which is good, but it'll make you not visible, which is less extreme than what ngIf does. So this will be closer, but still not work. So now I click on edit, and it didn't crash, which is good. My log says it found the input element, which is good. The thing that's bad is it still didn't put focus on here like I wanted. So why did it do that? And you're like, stupid thing. So it all worked, but now we've got a race condition. And the race condition is when you click a button, it gets the focus. So when I click this button, it actually, in the code, put the focus on the elements. And then as soon as the code was done, it did what HTML does by default, like HTML5, it puts the focus on the button. So you did actually successfully put the focus over here. It's just that it took it away a nanosecond later. So we want to win the race condition. So the console log did his job. This is kind of a hacky thing that I've been known to do every so often. There's a function called set timeout, which has been around for years and years and years. And what it lets you do is it lets you do something a little bit later. So it takes a fat arrow function and then also a timeout for how many seconds later to do something. It's in milliseconds, so I'm going to say 2000. And all I want to do inside this fat arrow function is set the input element focus. So I'm doing 2 seconds right now just so we can see this effect, right? So now I click this button and then 1,000, 2,000 puts it over there. So that totally worked. The way this game works with set timeout is you say, hey, how low can I set it, right? So can I set it to 100? Yep, 100 works. And then actually, can I set it to 0? Now setting it to 0 does something because it lets this code finish and any other code run. And then the next run loop later, it puts it on. So there's some chance that we can actually do time equals 0. And if we do that, hey, that does work, right? Although I kind of thought the effect was cooler when there was a minor delay, but you can do whatever you want with delays. That's just like an animation thing, right? No real difference between 100 and 0. So I think that was my last little bell and whistle. You can see that one was much harder because we had to move away from ngIf, and then we had to pass it the element. We had to add some CSS to hide it without using ngIf. And then after we finished all that, we had a race condition we had to fix. So this is automatically add focus to the input on edit. Cool. So it was hard, but that's kind of like the law of diminishing returns, right? So the more minor things get, the longer they take to do. But things are going good. Come back next time. We'll do a little bit more. The thing we have left to do is the My Post page. So the My Post page is just like that right now. So we'll come back and we'll do that next time. See you then. Bye.